name is Dr. Diane Bardenave, and I'm the QEP Quality Enhancement Plan Committee Chair, and I'm joined here today with fellow committee member, Mr. Norbert Davidson. If you can. Ada, I'm going to never be able to pronounce your name. If you want to say it, that would be helpful.
Ada Kwan Boonbumpen.
Okay. Mr. Ashu Benjamin, Dr. Igwe Uday, and Dr. Marshall, Douglas Marshall, who will be leading our focus group. So we've been working as a committee to identify a topic that we would like to propose for the university to enhance student learning. And based on the previous input we've gotten from different constituents, we have arrived at a topic which is oral communication. But we would like to delve deeper into what that means for us as a committee, as a university, for our students, for our faculty, our staff. You know, what aspect of oral communication we should really focus our attention on in this process. So that's the purpose of this focus group. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Marshall, and he will lead us through some questions and get your input through this process. So I thank you very much for attending. We have some cookies and water over here if you need anything. And Dr. Marshall.
Thank you for being here today. As one of two faculty members in communication, I was either volunteered myself for this today, which I'm extremely happy to do. Like Dr. Bourdenay said, we're trying to figure out what does oral communication mean. That may mean different things to different people. So one of the things that we're trying to establish is what are the strengths and deficiencies in our students as far as oral communication. How is SUNO preparing students to be better oral communicators, and how can we better serve them in that regard? So one of the things that I want to think about, and I want everyone to remember today, I kind of classify oral communication in one of two categories: either interpersonal communication or public speaking. So please try to remember that today when you are talking about oral communication. Interpersonal is the conversations that you're having one-on-one or in very small groups about, with people that you want to have good relationships with, or you must have good relationships with. And public speaking is more about what I'm doing right now, right? So just if you could distinguish between those two, interpersonal or public speaking, and then that will help us define a little bit better what our focus should be. Also, I'd like to know, I just want to see where our certain factions are in the room. If you would just raise your hand if you're a student. So we have two students. Faculty, I know most faculty. Staff, and we don't have any outside employers in the room. Is that correct? And did I miss anyone? Okay, so what I'd like to do is just start off with the students. And I guess if faculty or staff feels like they have anything to add, there will be similar questions later, but this is an open thing, and I'm going to try to talk less and let this be more of a conversation that we can capture and then analyze later. So what I would like to first propose to the students, I'd like you to discuss what you think the deficiencies in oral communication are, both interpersonal and in public speaking, among yourselves, if you're to be a little reflective, and other students. What are the deficiencies?
I can begin. My name is Adrienne Hutchison. I think that as far as interpersonal conversation, maybe not necessarily being able to convey their message from maybe a younger, more impersonal standpoint to maybe a person in leadership. So I think sometimes the slang and the jargon carries over into conversations that maybe should be a little bit more professional, even if it is just a teacher to a student. Sometimes I do think those there's no on-off switch from a student to say that you're not having a conversation with your friend but maybe someone who, or a peer maybe, but someone who is of authority. I don't necessarily see that as often in students communicating. Sometimes with professors, they seem to be a little bit more lax than I would personally do. So,
So it's a question of role. Students aren't
Correct.
able to properly switch their style of communication when they're engaging with someone of a different role
Correct.
or status. Okay, good.
I would have to agree with what you just said. A lot of students speak in text or what are slang, like she just said, and there's usually a miscommunication of what they intend to say based on what the actual teacher or faculty or even other students are actually getting. And I mean, that's a very big part of communication, for them to be able to receive and understand exactly what are you trying to say to them so that they can relate that back to you and answer you properly. That is interpersonal. Were we supposed to answer both of them?
Yeah, I would like to hear what you
Okay.
think about as far as if you think of presentation skills. I know that not everyone is taking public speaking, so if you think about presentations in the classroom as well.
As far as public speaking, while each class that I've been in, especially in the business department, a project is required in order to pass. Most students do not take that advantage to actually completely read the material and speak in terms of what they read. They go back to how they talk normally every day and speak in jargon, and without the understanding that that's what they need to survive outside of the school arena.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add about that?
So what I could say about public speaking is that in my tenure at SUNO, I've at least seen it grow. So maybe some of our presentations in some of my earlier classes compared to now in my graduating senior classes, I can definitely say I've seen progress. So I would say that I know just from personal experience in a career that it's something that does take time. And so I think that with not every class necessarily having a project that requires public speaking, they may not develop those skills, may not perfect those skills before leaving, but I can at least attest to saying that as now a graduating senior, I can say that seeing some of the presentations now are a lot better than maybe, my first couple semesters in. So I think it's progress. I just think that it'll develop maybe over time and into a career.
Great, thank you. And I think that you touched on this next question a little bit with that answer, but the following question I have is how has SUNO prepared you to become a better oral communicator? So obviously having that presentation aspect embedded in the classes is one way, would you agree?
Yeah.
What are other ways, and you can think about this, you can answer from public speaking or interpersonal standpoint, what are things that SUNO has done in your experience here that has helped you personally become a better oral communicator?
Well, personally for me, within College of Business, that's where my program is that they have tasked students to give presentations, especially at their College of Business events and different things like that. Also, they have also tasked us to go outside into the community for different programs, and we have been asked to speak. Interpersonal and in group sessions.
Thank you.
As far as interpersonal conversations, SUNO is before coming to SUNO, I actually attended LSU. And so there was absolutely no interpersonal conversations. It's a huge, school, and you don't actually get to interact with different departments. At SUNO, from my inception into the college, I've been able to speak with so many different departments, different advisors, and so I think that being the type of university it is where you have so much contact with so many different departments and staff, I think it's probably better at teaching interpersonal skills and conversation skills than some of the larger universities, just because you actually have to go out and meet your professor or go talk to your advisor, or so it's so much more hands-on that I think it probably builds a better interpersonal skill set with students than larger universities, at least in my experience.
Great, great. One final question for just the students, and please remain engaged. You can pop in for these other questions. But when you look toward graduation and entering the workforce, what is your sense of which one is more important for starting a career? These interpersonal skills or presentation skills, public speaking skills? Which one do you think is more vital? Is there a mix? Is it 50-50? What are your thoughts?
For me, it's both. I'm currently looking for a job, and in each one, they match me with people that I will be working with, and I would have to have a conversation with them to decide whether or not I'm the best fit for the department that I'm in. And also public speaking, because I would have to also, like in school, give presentations and speak to a wide range of audiences, and I have to be able to do that effectively.
Thank you.
I think interpersonal conversation skills maybe being the forefront of importance because those interpersonal conversations are going to be how you sell yourself into employment. I think once you get that position and that job, you can practice still on your public speaking and your presentation. Over time, you won't necessarily be presenting all the time, but those interpersonal conversation skills are something that you're going to have to do on a daily basis. So I do think that those are imperative to success in finding a job and networking and making those relationships that lead to being able to do presentations and things like that. But I think those skills need to kind of be honed in on before you get into the workforce. I think public speaking, you can kind of perfect that as you go on into your career.
Great, and just for clarity's sake, I think that I want to let everyone know that in the QEP committee, we discussed the act of an interview setting is kind of like a mix between interpersonal and public speaking, because you're typically asked to begin with some sort of statement to, define who you are and what you are doing looking for this position, and then there's that one-on-one interaction that you really can't plan for, right? So it is something to keep in mind that the interview situation that is very important is kind of a mix of those two things. So thank you, and again, students, please stay engaged.
Okay, my question is, reflect on yourselves. If you're talking about yourself specifically, where do you think you need more help as a student? If you look at yourself as someone who's about to enter the workforce, where do you think you would need the most help?
Personally, my interpersonal conversation, I can remind myself to maybe have those conversations, but they aren't always natural. And so I've gotten better at them, but it's not necessarily always something that, like I said, comes natural to me to maybe have those conversations or start that networking or things like that.
As for me, I do a lot of public speaking here. So for me, it would be more interpersonal skills, even though I pay more attention to myself when I'm in a professional setting, but I lack that same attention when I'm talking to other students.
Thank you. That's honest. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk to the faculty a little bit. Again, faculty, everyone to raise their hands again, just so I know where everyone's at. Okay, good. What feedback have you received in regard to our students' ability to speak and communicate? I know that some faculty members have contacts with outside programs and employers and even other programs within the university. So what feedback are you receiving about our students? Or have you received?
Actually, to my knowledge, this is the first time this matter has been brought up.
Okay. So maybe we're not receiving enough. Go ahead.
I have the internship class for child development and family studies, and so students are placed, in the field. And I've received feedback for some that have the interpersonal communication skills. and some life in presenting. For one group with College Tribe, they had to present before parents, and they were nervous and didn't feel that they were completely prepared. Whereas in every class that I teach, they have to do the face-to-face classes. They must do a presentation. Also for students in groups, we do groups, and so that they can report out from the group. When I walk around to listen to whatever the topic is, they're talking in slang, and when they present in slang. I remind them not to use the text language in their papers and in their presentation. If they're real comfortable in the class with their classmate, the behavior continues, even though you intervene to correct it. And also I've received from site supervisors that some of the students are excellent with presenting and the eye contact. I find that if students are not prepared, if they meet with me as the director of Child Development Family Studies as well, face to face, they don't have good eye contact. Some of the comments and remarks that the students have given that are in here are valid.
Okay. I think that's something that we've heard, just so we remember this and it's on video, is this idea of audience adaptation. When is it okay to speak in jargon? When is it okay to speak in slang? And knowing the proper audience to speak in front of.
Right. And the other thing I like to point out too, because they are comfortable with their peers in the class. So if one is presenting, I call it the sidebar conversation, and I have to intervene to try to get everybody's attention, individual attention, to listen to the class.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson.
Something that I've encountered and expanded to a number of faculty who teach online and communicate with our online students over the telephone is the students appear to have difficulty in clearly and succinctly transmitting information to us. For example, got a call from one of my online students this morning, and she was having problems with the midterm exam. And she was saying that the system was not allowing her to take the test. And I was asking her, what is it telling you? What is the system telling you? And she was not clear in explaining to me what she was seeing on her end. Later I talked to Ms. Sheila Wood, because I recommended the student call e-learning about the problem, because I couldn't see it at my end. And when I talked to Ms. Wood had the same problem understanding what was going on. The student was not transmitting the information clearly. It turned out that she was trying to take the test on her cell phone. There was some problem with Wi-Fi. But it was, as Ms. Wood said, it took a long time to understand that that was the problem, because the student was not clearly providing the information that we needed.
Thank you. Dr. Kidd.
All of my students do a lot more public speaking than they do. Well, they might with their peers in schools, but the only thing that I've heard from administrators has been that they lack in grammarian speaking, and so that's basically it. That they can dialogue okay, but it's not correct English. And so one of the things that I've heard from 2 parishes in particular is that they sometimes, even though they're good in their classroom, but when they have to do presentations, the parishes are hesitant to put them out there in that because of the errors that they make in their grammar.
Interesting.
Yeah, just gonna piggyback on Mr. Davidson's point is that in their email communication, I find, certainly this day of text messaging, that the emails are in the same format as text messaging. And as I mentioned to them, particularly for my online classes, that I don't know people, I don't know what class they're in, and so if I get the text message type message of, what did we do today? I don't know how to respond to that, and so I don't know why exactly. I do find it's getting better, but I have always, since I've been here, I found that's a problem, that in email communication, students to instructors, students to faculty, is that it's done more like a text message than it is a formal communication.
So it sounds to me like we have a mix of good and bad oral and written communication habits, and then formal and informal, and it just creates a little bit of a mess sometimes. So we are focusing on oral, but certainly it's one of these issues is that these written communication habits are following us into how we have dialogue with other people.
Just
So
to
it's
follow up on
important.
what Dr. K was saying, is it possible that the students are being aware of their grammatical deficiencies, and that's affecting their public speech,
Yeah, they are.
public
They are.
presentation?
And many of them will actually send me some things and say, would you prove this for me to make sure that it's okay, and then they'll present. So, yeah, they're aware of it. But it's difficult after you used to doing it like that for so many years to turn that switch over.
Other faculty members.
I'm not faculty, I'm staff, so I'm with the staff, it's okay? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, you're fine.
So, what we've noticed with, well, I'm with Student Support Services Trio, which is a U.S. Department of Ed grant. And we have been charged with identifying best practices based on evidence-based research and those non-cognitive skills that students lack. And so we identified that, our students need to have an academic mindset. So we tried doing word of the day, and that became a little complex for them. So we started doing word of the week. And we told them if you would use, vocabulary that you wouldn't ordinarily use, you would get a little prize. So go out and get some good prizes that they would be willing to do. Also in our lab, we want the students to come to the lab because they need the tutoring and advising and counseling and mentoring. But we also want it to be a safe place for them where they can feel comfortable and speak with their peers. But it sometimes we're placed in a very precarious situation because we want them to be comfortable in the lab and speak freely, but then we want them to practice that academic mindset. And sometimes students, it may be a cultural thing, but it's almost like you're putting on airs if you speak properly and use correct grammar. And you're not being real, and if you don't use your slang. So what we're trying to do is to show students that you can have both. You just have to, like you said, know when to turn it on and know when to turn it off. We have very bright students, but we fail them when they go into an interview that they cannot pass, and we know they're not going to pass because we know they don't know the proper eye contact, they don't know the grammar, and so. We try to, with some of our students, like we'll do mock interviews and we'll videotape them. We don't always do it because time is an essence, but we usually I'll tell them, come on in the office and interview you. And then we'll go over, okay, this is what was good, because we don't want to tear them down and just tell them everything they did wrong. But then we tell them what they need to work on. Some students with the grammar, again, it's like riding a bike. You're not constantly thinking, move one pedal, the next, it's going to naturally come to you. And if that's how you speak every day at home and at school and at work, then that's just how you're going to speak. And so we're always trying to think about what can we do without tearing down their ego and their self-esteem, but letting them know the importance that this is what we really need to work on because this is an injustice and, we're not doing, anything for you.
Thank you for that. I heard create a space to practice these skills and also help our students with the ability to pivot. It's okay to talk in a lot of different ways, but know when, and be able to pivot seamlessly. Yeah, that's really great. I saw a hand up, I think, no? What I'm gonna do is, since we have a nice mix here, or do you have a follow-up?
I want to follow up on what she said and what Dr. K said. One of the things that we hear from employers when they come to us is that our students are not able to incorporate the buzzwords and the discipline into their conversations. Because when you're making a business presentation, it's not the same as making a video. Like when you talk about demand, demand is not demand. Demand is a business concept.
Right.
When you talk about supply, supply is, so they are not incorporating accounting concepts and things, and they're just talking ordinary English. And so the audience is wanting to hear something. Investors are wanting to hear something that will allow them to have the confidence to, and our students, by the time they finish, many of them are still not able to build whatever they learned into their oral conversation. When they write papers or when they make formal presentations, they may be able to put that in there. But when it is face to face and you talk to them about something, they are not using those buzzwords. And so that is how many of them fall out in interviews, because they are talking about the position they are applying for. And then when they are asked to articulate what it means, they are not able to build in the concepts that will convince the other side that they know what that position is supposed to be about. So to me, it's more about this oral communication, this interpersonal communication, where when you're looking someone face to face, you're not able to communicate what they want to hear from you. But the look on the paper is on the paper. But when it comes to you talking to me, it creates a little doubt. So to me, that's what corporations are telling us. That's what they really need our students to go that extra mile of being able to build the concepts, the buzzwords of the discipline into their interpersonal communication.
And I think one of the words you use is one of the keys is, and that's the confidence to believe that you can do the incorporation. The confidence that you can articulate a problem.
Even if it's the incorrect buzzwords, they want to hear some of them.
Right.
They're exposed to them.
But aren't they're exposed to, say, in business classes, they're exposed to these words and the concepts.
Yes.
But they don't have the confidence to bring it into their conversation.
Please allow me to just make some general statements on the QUP. First of all, Dr. Badinov, I appreciate how far you have led the group, and I want to thank all members of the QUP task force. Based on what I'm hearing, the way we are going, I feel comfortable. I just want to reiterate what many of us already know. And as we go on with these kinds of meetings, please let's keep these points in mind. The very first thing we have to pay attention to is what will be the student learning outcome from whatever we do. What will students, what are we going to tell the world that our students have gained, have benefited from our QUP topic? And we must be able to demonstrate it, and over about 3 to 4 years, when we are implementing it, obtain data to show that this was where they were before we started this QUP project, and now this is where they are in the area of whichever one we choose. Let me not give my bias yet, but we have to keep that in mind. If we keep that in mind, it's going to be very helpful on which area of oral communication we tend to, because you must select a field or an area in which you can obtain data that are measurable, that you can demonstrate, and present a research to show where your students were before you started the QUP topic, and then where they were 1 year into implementation.